Now it's working. Just a little delay. Hey Enzo, you know that dating app Bumble?
Yeah.
They sent a notification saying, help us support healthy consensual relationships. Today when you match, we donate to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, I saw college, or what was it, Hill Country Republicans post about that.
Ugh.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom quick.
Okay. All right, you ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's whenever I want.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you want.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is April 22nd, 2018. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
So, there's a lot of news this week, Bobby. A lot more than the last couple weeks, I'd say.
Yeah, a lot more news. A lot of spread out news. Last week there was a lot of news, but it's very concentrated in just a couple of stories. This week, it's all over the place, my friend.
Yeah, there was, we keep a docket of all the stuff we're going to talk about, and, this week we had to cut it significantly because it was just so much stuff. But without further ado, we might as well just get into it and start off with this Comey stuff we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so first things first, there were 15 pages of personal memos that former FBI Director James Comey had written were released to the public. First, they were released to a congressional committee, therefore then released to the public after they looked at them. The memos contained sections that were blacked out, though, meaning that Comey was actually, that is evidence at least to show that because of the fact that there were portions that were blacked out means he was leaking classified information to people that did have access to his memos. Because we know that he had previously given memos to one of his friends. Remember when that story broke a while back that he had given it to, I think it was either a reporter or a personal friend of his?
Who released it to the media.
Yeah, essentially, if you're releasing these memos and it comes out to the fact that there are portions that are blacked out and redacted for being classified information, you can say that he was leaking classified information. There is evidence to show that. Anyways, nothing really came out of this memo release. It just kind of confirmed stuff that people already knew, that Comey was just writing down everything. A lot of stuff does seem to be exaggerated. There were some funny things. There was one part where it says, the memos say that President Trump told Comey that Putin told him that Russia has the most beautiful hookers in the world. So, a lot of just little stuff like that, but the one thing that it does not show is any evidence of collusion with Russia at all. And also, it proves that Donald Trump was not trying to obstruct justice in any way, shape, or form throughout the whole process of the Mueller investigation, the whole look into alleged Russian collusion, any of that stuff. So, if anything, his memos, although they're kind of weird and funky and probably exaggerated in some portions, doesn't show that Trump did anything wrong.
Yeah. So now this is also connecting to some actions that the Justice Department is pursuing in regards to the Comey memos.
Yeah, so the Justice Department's Inspector General is probing whether or not Comey leaked the classified information in his memos because of what I mentioned before about portions being blacked out and redacted. 8 of the 15 pages that were released contained information that had been redacted as classified information. So over half of the pages. Now, Comey did not have the authority to declassify the information. President Trump did. President has that authority. An FBI director does not have the authority to declassify information the way that Comey, I'll just use the word allegedly did. Now, Comey did, here's the information where I was looking before, in terms of when he was leaking that information. He gave 4 of the 7 memos that were released, so, 15 pages, 7 memos, about 2 pages-ish each. Comey gave 4 of those to his friend Daniel Richman, who was a professor at Columbia Law School, and from there it made its way to the press. So, yeah, Comey did leak classified information. There is evidence of that, and the DOJ Inspector General is now investigating whether or not there was some, anything can be done about that. So, in terms of Comey's regard, things are not looking well for him right now.
It's interesting because Comey also released his memoir book this week, and he's been doing public tour for that book. And you look at the photos of these tours, he's doing even worse than Hillary Clinton was for her book tour, and those were at like Costco's.
Yeah, they said that, I think either it was Barnes & Noble or one of those sort of bookstores was already offering his book at a 30% discount on the second day of its release. And there was one video of some people that were protesting his book. I guess I could use the word book tour, if that's probably the best way to use it. he was giving a speech at one of the bookstores, and then this lady is all like, blah blah blah, you suck, Comey, you obstructed justice, you belong in prison, and all these people are like booing the chick that's protesting, but it's all like cat ladies in the audience, which is the exact same people that would have showed up to Hillary Clinton's book signing, which is the exact same people that show up to things like the March for Our Lives or the Women's March, wearing their pink pussy hats. It's all the same group of people that are doing that. You have this very small, concentrated, but very loud minority of like cat ladies and people like that just actually believe the whole Russia investigation, all that stuff. They believe what they see on CNN and MSNBC. And so when Comey comes to town, they're like, of course, let's go, Susan. And then I really do feel sorry for these people.
Yeah. Now, Comey wasn't the only former FBI official who's had some, I guess you could say, surveillance, or not surveillance, but he's undergoing examination by the Justice Department's Inspector General, and that includes also Andrew McCabe this week.
Yeah, the Justice Department's Inspector General has issued a criminal referral to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. against former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Possible charges are likely to include lying to investigators, among other things. This comes a week after the Inspector General issued a report saying that McCabe, quote, lacked candor when discussing issues related to the FBI's investigation into the Clinton Foundation with the Wall Street Journal. The IG also found that McCabe was not authorized to disclose the existence of that investigation. However, because the existence of that investigation technically was not classified at that time, he technically didn't actually break the law, hence the whole, lacked candor thing, okay? Does that make sense? He did, however, lie to investigators about it, though. So that's where this whole criminal referral comes to, is lying to investigators after the fact. He's a shady guy, but technically speaking, he didn't do anything illegal in releasing that information. Unfortunately, however, because of the fact that it was filed in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., it's unlikely that they will pursue charges even further, or anything is going to happen. So it's probably going to get dropped, or just nothing's going to happen, which is unfortunate, but, it's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, but this is kind of a follow-up of what we talked about last week, and it shows that the firing of Andrew McCabe was justified.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
This is a guy that shouldn't have been the position he was, and he compromised the FBI by his directive. Moving on from there, Rudy Giuliani joined Trump's legal team this week.
Yeah, on Thursday it was announced that former New York City Mayor and U.S. Attorney Rudy Giuliani will be joining President Trump's legal team. Giuliani, if you didn't know, had dinner with Trump earlier this month at Mar-a-Lago, so I can guarantee you they discussed whether or not he should be joining his legal team at that time. When asked about whether Mueller should keep his job, however, Giuliani said, quote, "My advice on Mueller has been this. He should be allowed to do his job. He's entitled to do his job." However, he also signaled a quick ending to the Mueller probe, saying, quote, "I'm doing it because I hope we can negotiate an end to this for the good of the country and because I have a high regard for the president and for Bob Mueller." Now, there's been some quotes running around that Giuliani says he hopes to see the end of the Mueller probe within the next couple of weeks. I highly doubt it's going to be that soon. I mean, you and I have both seen Rudy Giuliani. He was at one of the Trump rallies that we went to in Austin back in 2016. So, Giuliani, a lot of people have problems with the guy. I don't necessarily dislike him a lot like other people on the right do. I think it's a good addition to his legal team. Giuliani has been on Trump's side this entire time. Even during the primaries and into the general election, he was very pro-Trump. So I don't necessarily think that we have to worry about him, being the guy that gets in there, says I'm going to be pro-Trump and then doesn't. I think he legitimately wants to help Trump out, has the power to. I mean, he was an attorney, so, in that regard, I'm okay with this deal, or him joining the legal team, but I just don't think he's actually going to be able to end the Mueller probe within a couple of weeks, as he said.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Enzo?
Especially, touching on something that we're going to touch on a little bit with the pressure that, the FBI is putting on Trump through raiding his lawyer Cohen's office. If he was to try and end the Mueller probe right now, or, fire Rosenstein, which, you know, Sessions has said he would likely quit if Rosenstein was fired.
I'm okay with that.
Which, yeah, I'd be okay with that happening. I just think if he was to do so, there would be a lot of chaos in the country.
There absolutely would be. I mean, we've seen just how, I mean, we titled this...
It would be very unstable.
We titled this episode Deep State Intimidates for a reason, because, you know, as hard as Trump is trying, there are sections within the government and the left, especially the political, I should say, left, that are absolutely doing everything they possibly can to stop Trump. And a lot of times that means that they're just, you know, bogging him down with legislation, bogging him down with just legal issues. Hence, you know, as you just said, the raiding of Cohen's office in New York City. You know, a lot of people said that that destroys the whole attorney-client privilege or confidentiality agreement. Trump even tweeted about that himself. We know that the Russia probe, the whole Mueller probe, isn't really going anywhere right now. We're going to get here to a second about the DNC even suing without any, you know, evidence to back up their suit. You know, there's indicating reports that have come out about, you know, now that we've seen, as we said, the documents from Comey, it shows that the Mueller probe was started essentially without any evidence to back it up. It was started just as a way to, like,
or a specified scope.
Yeah,
which is what we're seeing at this point, because, you know, it's because of the Mueller probe that Cohen's office was raided.
Yes.
But what does that have to do with Russian collusion?
And what does that have to do with, you know, the whole Stormy Daniels thing? Oh, you know, as part of a non-disclosure agreement multiple years ago, or, you know, before the election, Stormy Daniels was paid $130,000 as part of a non-disclosure agreement. Okay, I don't care if Trump had sex with a porn star a decade ago.
You might think that's bad, but what does that have to do with Russian collusion?
That has nothing to do with Russian collusion. Yeah, it might be. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It might look bad for Trump. What would it? Was it illegal? They say it. You know, it might have been a campaign contribution or misuse of that. I don't even know how you could even prove whether or not that actually was. If anything, it's just shady, you know, stuff. Was it illegal? No, it's not illegal to have sex with a porn star. It's, you know, bad to cheat on your wife if he was married at that time. It's absolutely bad. But do I really honestly care? Absolutely not. Does it have anything to do with Russia? Absolutely not. Should Mueller even be looking at that as part of the broad, general Russia investigation blanket that we can put on this? Absolutely not. And so, yeah, you're right. If Trump was to try to fire Mueller or fire Rosenstein, as much as those things need to happen, they're not going to let Trump get away with that at this point.
Yeah.
Now, the voters might let him get away with it, or they might not. But that's one of those things where, you know, as much as we would like to see Trump use the absolute power that the presidency has to get some of the things done that he wants to do, there's so much bureaucracy in the way that he has to work through that it's just impossible to get some of the things done that we want to see done in the time frame or the way that we want to see them done. And so that's why a lot of people on the right complain about, you know, Trump not being able to do this or Trump not being able to do that. But they forget that he is facing uphill battle every step of the way. He's having to jump over every single hurdle that they throw at him. It's a surprise we've even got so much done that we already have. It's a surprise that things are going as well as they actually are right now. And so for that regard, I just say to the people on the right that criticize Trump at every single thing that he does, you know, criticize him if he does something bad. But if he's just having trouble doing it because people are trying to stop him, give the guy a little credit for what he's trying to do. Would you like to see the left back in charge and destroy everything and and put in the exact opposite of what we want to see? No, Trump is not perfect. He's not perfect in any regard. But he's hell of a lot better. In fact, most of the things that he wants to do are things we want to see happen. So if you all, you know, people on the right, Trump supporters, just abandon him over one little thing he does wrong or a couple things you don't like, forgetting the thousands and thousands of other things that we do like, that he has accomplished even, I just think that's counterproductive for our side, and we need to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah. So getting back to what we're talking about, on Friday, the Democratic Party filed a civil suit against President Trump's presidential campaign, the Russian government, and WikiLeaks, claiming a broad, illegal conspiracy to help Trump win the 2016 election. The multi-million-dollar lawsuit filed in Manhattan federal court said that, quote, In the Trump campaign, Russia found a willing and active partner in this effort to mount a brazen attack on American democracy, which includes alleged Russian infiltration of the DNC's computer network. In a statement on Friday, the Trump campaign called the lawsuit frivolous and a last-ditch effort to substantiate the baseless Russian collusion allegations by the nearly bankrupt Democratic Party. The named defendants in the lawsuit includes Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, Robert Gates, Roger Stone, the Russian Federation, the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, the unknown hacker Guccifer 2.0, WikiLeaks and its leader Julian Assange, and 10 other unidentified individuals.
So here's my thoughts on this, and this is kind of just the general knowledge that people have been saying about it. Yeah, this thing obviously is frivolous. They don't have any evidence to back up their lawsuit. You know, they're just trying to get this thing into court. And what I've been reading is that a lot of big-name Democrat donors are unhappy with this because of one simple fact. They have to absolutely 100% prove in a court of law that Trump, the Russian government, and WikiLeaks all were coordinating as part of this, broad illegal conspiracy that they say to try to help Trump win in the 2016 election. Whereas the Trump campaign has to prove that they didn't. Or, at least prove that there was no collusion there. Now, the Trump campaign has said that they are going to do a countersuit regarding this. And that's, I think, where the bigger, most important thing is. Because if you notice, they're suing WikiLeaks and they're suing Julian Assange as part of this case. Okay? They have to prove that Russia allegedly was the source of...
Which they can't
the DNC leaks.
They can't even bring the Russian Federation to court. It's outside of their jurisdiction.
Yes, but by doing so, you have to prove that the Russian Federation was the source of the DNC leaks that were given to WikiLeaks. A lot of people think that was Seth Rich. Now, if it was Seth Rich, and we have reason to believe that it was, or even evidence that it was, you can use that in court. Now, I know that Julian Assange says he never wants to give up any of his confidential sources of where he got the information that he publishes onto WikiLeaks, and I applaud him for that. But push comes to shove, if you're sitting there in a court and you have to prove it, and they have evidence to actually say that it was, I'm just using this as an example, say it was actually Seth Rich, and they come forward and say, here's our evidence, here's, text messages or messages that Seth Rich sent us, here's the emails he sent them in, here's all the evidence to prove who it was. That opens such a big can of worms for the left that, I'm kind of rambling here, but you can see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
That by countersuing them, you can then prove the DNC's incompetence. You can get the FBI to look at the DNC's hacked servers, which the FBI has never had access to those things at all, when they should have years ago when it first happened. If the Democrats don't allow their servers that were hacked to be viewed by the FBI as part of, any sort of countersuit for this, you can claim obstruction of justice. That's for sure. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong about this, and it's one of those things that it looks bad. They have no evidence, and if anything, it only helps our side. There's no way this can hurt us.
Yeah. So some of the things that are interesting for me on this is, one, they're filing a civil suit.
Right. That's important to point out as well.
They are not even, alleging that they did anything criminal by doing a civil suit. Two, now they have to prove that there was infiltration to the DNC. And, we've talked before, you look at the metadata on what was taken. In the manner that it was taken, it wasn't done externally. It had to have been done internally.
Locally, yeah.
Which is, brings about the idea that maybe Seth Rich did it, maybe it was someone else. But there's no reason to point to Russians doing this so far. But just... It really shows that they don't have a lot of faith in the Mueller probe at the moment. That was supposed to be the one thing that was going to shut down Trump for good by themselves. Why else would they do a lawsuit like this? And when they put out a lawsuit like this, which has, all these unidentified individuals, people that you can't bring to the court, things that you can't prove, how are they expecting to win this? How is this just not an opportunity to lose more money for themselves?
Because it's an opportunity for the Trump side to lose money and time as well.
Yeah.
You start getting Trump's attorneys or the RNC's attorneys all, bogged down with legal stuff that they have to deal with in a frivolous case, then you go after them for anything else that you want to do, or just waste their time and waste their money, which is, a strong possibility that's what they're trying to do as well.
An important thing to remember in terms of the DNC hacks, though, is that they've never turned any of the evidence over to the federal authorities. They never even reported a crime. They handled it all internally. They outsourced it to their own hand-picked organization to say that Russian infiltration caused this. And now they're finally going to have to submit that stuff to federal court for the civil suit. I just don't think they have it. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. But moving on to something that we mentioned earlier, Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, his office was raided this week.
Well, it was raided last week, we talked about it, but there's some information that's since been revealed as part of that raid, and that is that on Monday, news was revealed that Fox News host Sean Hannity was named as one of Trump attorney Michael Cohen's other clients after the judge in the case ordered that the names of his other clients be released. Now, Hannity has admitted that he did seek Cohen's legal advice in the past, but he denies that he is currently his attorney. There are pictures of Hannity and Cohen that Hannity himself tweeted out several years ago. So he's not trying to deny the fact that he knew the guy. Hannity's from New York. Trump is from New York. The guy's a well-known lawyer for guys like him. He's, from what I know, he's a pretty conservative lawyer for all things considered for that area. So, of course, these guys all knew each other. They're all, rich guys who, again, I keep using the word knew each other, but you can't stress that enough. There's nothing there, essentially. And Hannity, he came out and said, yeah, I knew the guy, but he's not my lawyer right now. And then that story died off the news. However, one thing that is continuing is we've learned a little bit more about the actual judge in that case. The judge is Judge Kimball Wood, and the judge in that case officiated the 2013 wedding of billionaire George Soros, who was then 83, to his 42-year-old wife. And also, we found out that House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi was one of the 500 people that was in attendance of that wedding. So, we do have evidence to show that this judge in this case might have a little bit of a bias there.
Birds of a feather.
Exactly. However, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein told Trump last week that he is not a target of the Cohen investigation or the Mueller probe. Now, that's something that's kind of come up in the news multiple times over the last couple months, is Rosenstein telling Trump, or Trump being told, that he is not a target of the Mueller probe, he's not a target of the Cohen investigation. Now, that means either these people are lying or they're telling the truth. I think everything comes down to simple things like that. If they are telling the truth that Trump actually isn't a target of the Mueller probe, then I just got to say, what the hell's the point of the Mueller probe then? It's obvious the only reason that thing exists is to try to take down Trump.
Yeah.
Now, the Cohen investigation, you can say, okay, well, that's part of the whole Stormy Daniels thing, but even then, that's still part of the whole broad, try to take down Trump movement that they have. So I personally don't think these people are telling the truth when they tell Trump you're not actually a target. But if they are telling the truth and Trump isn't a target of this investigation, or, I should say these investigations, honestly, I don't even know what to say at that point, because I can't actually imagine that being the case. I really can't.
Yeah. So let's move on to the last thing that we have for the top of the news here before we get into some other things, and that is Trump stopped new Russian sanctions. President Trump has put a stop to a plan to impose additional sanctions on Russia for its alleged role in the recent suspected chemical weapons attack in Syria. This is coming after Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, last Sunday announced that additional sanctions on Russia were forthcoming. Earlier this month, Trump approved the expulsion of dozens of Russian diplomats after the alleged nerve gas attack against ex-Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter living in Salisbury, United Kingdom. So this is something that we talked about last week that we didn't want whatsoever. We weren't looking forward to more sanctions put on the Russian Federation, and Trump has stopped it from happening. Now, the second that Trump does this, everyone says he's, controlled by Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
But my thing is just, one, economic sanctions don't punish the regime. It just punishes the citizens. I don't have any sort of ill feeling towards Russian citizens. Why would we do this to begin with? But, two, if we're trying to improve our relationship with Russia and trying to stabilize, Syria, why would we provoke them more so with more sanctions? So, a lot of people have been talking this week about the potential of Nikki Haley leaving, the administration over this, because they obviously see very differently in regards on how you're supposed to treat Russia. Do you have any thoughts on how this is going about?
Really, the only thing I have to say in this regard is, and this kind of goes back to the whole, recent Syria airstrike that was made, I guess now about a week and a half ago at this point. Trump is seeming to walk back a lot of things that his base does not like. We've now seen time and time again that every single time Trump does something big that his base doesn't like, they get very angry and then he slowly walks it back. This is one of those things. And I think that, in a way, it is a little bit going to try to, mend the relationship with Russia. I know our relationship with Russia is at one of the worst, if not the worst times it's been since the Cold War. And
he has put sanctions
during
his administration on Russia.
Even what you had just said, just earlier this month, he approved the expulsion of dozens of Russian diplomats after the, alleged nerve agent attack.
Even though there's no evidence for Russian involvement. We've talked about in the past, what was it, last week? There was a lab in Switzerland that found that the nerve agent that was used wasn't even something that was made in Russia.
Right. And so, you have all this, especially from the United States, you see a lot of people that are trying to paint Russia as the bad guy, trying to paint Russia as the worst people in the world, as like the United States' #1 enemy. Yet, Russia does not need to be our enemy. I don't even consider Russia our enemy right now. I mean, that's just me personally.
Yeah.
I think that...
But a lot of Americans do.
Yeah, and, for different reasons, and a lot of them, do make some sense. A lot of it does stem from Cold War mentality. Let's not kid ourselves in that regard. But at the same time, we don't need to be putting new sanctions on Russia, as you said. So I'm glad that Trump stopped that effort. That would have looked really bad if he bombed Syria and then says, oh, yeah, Russia, by the way, here's some more sanctions. So you got to take these things slowly. I think putting more sanctions on Russia is, I guess I could use the word an overreaction to things right now. Definitely does not need to be done, so I am happy that we are not putting these new sanctions on Russia. But I do want to come back to one last thing, and that was when you were talking about Nikki Haley. Now, she was kind of making her rounds on the TV shows earlier this week when they were talking about these sanctions, and at one point when it was come out that what she wanted to do and what Trump wanted to do were opposites, him wanting to not put the sanctions, her wanting to put the sanctions, she said something, it was a quote, I believe it was along the lines of, I'm never confused. And so you see that there is this split between Trump and Nikki Haley right now. And I personally think that Nikki Haley should not keep her job. I don't think that she is helping us at the UN. I think her personal motives, her political motives are not in line with what Trump wants, not in line with what we want. And so because of that, we know Nikki Haley is a neocon. And I think there are too many neocons that are in Trump's cabinet right now, and she needs to get out. That's my personal thought on the matter.
Yeah, I don't think that she's been overly helpful in her position. With that said, though, let's move on to some immigration news.
So, the first story that we have up in immigration this week is the story of an illegal immigrant who has fled to his home country. But before he fled to his home country, let's just reverse a little bit track and explain exactly what he did. Frederick Amfo, 30 years old, an illegal alien from Ghana, locked the car doors, he was an Uber driver by the way, he locked the car doors and raped a female passenger back on April 8th. He was arrested after a DNA test confirmed his identity, but was released on bail just a few hours later, and then 3 days after that, fled to his native Ghana after his passport was not revoked, as it should have been. He was released because officials failed to notify immigration agents because the rape happened in Boston, Massachusetts. And if you don't know, Boston, Massachusetts is a sanctuary state, so police were not allowed to notify ICE that he was arrested. Meaning, you just let this rapist walk on free, and now you are never going to find him because he's in Africa right now.
You know, it's interesting. The feminists and leftists, you remember the Brock Turner incident where he got, I believe, like 6 or 7 months for rape, and they say, oh, this is, example of his white privilege, and this is the rape culture we live in. But here's someone who's not white. This is an illegal alien from Ghana. And he just gets to go. He doesn't even get any time.
Yeah.
But, we can't be against illegal aliens because who knows. But we're enabling rapes to happen because we don't take this seriously. We're allowing rape to go unpunished because we don't take illegal immigration seriously. It's just so crazy, and you can see the hypocrisy so blatantly. But, when an illegal alien from Ghana does it, they don't care so much.
No, just let them walk free. It's not like that is, a flight risk or anything.
Yeah.
But, we've got some other information on some ICE raids that happened in New York. So how about you would take us away with that?
Yeah, we'll continue on that. The stuff for immigration this week is kind of in no particular order. But the next thing that we have is there's some ICE raids in New York. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have arrested 225 illegal aliens in New York State as part of their 6-day operation known as Operation Keep Safe. More than 180 were convicted criminals or had criminal charges pending. 80 of them had final order for removal that they had failed to voluntarily leave for or had been previously deported. Some had prior felony convictions for crimes including child sex crimes, weapon charges, and assault. New York is considered a sanctuary state. Oleg Chernisky, a top New York PD official, said in February that they ignored more than 1,500 requests from ICE for detainment last year. So this is some good stuff. Fighting against sanctuary states, ICE still is able to get hundreds of illegal aliens. Who knows how many more they could, deport if they actually had full cooperation from all the officials in the state. But, we just talked about a guy got off for rape. There's guys that were running around that had sex crimes, and they were free.
Weapons charges.
Weapons charges. Definitely not sending their best. If the raid, arrests 225 illegal aliens, and 180 of them have either prior criminal convictions or pending convictions, what are we doing? They always like to say, these immigrants commit less crimes than you. Not in the case of the people that we stopped in this raid.
No, and like you said here, 80 of them had a final order for removal that they failed to voluntarily leave for or had previously been deported. If those people that had that final order for removal were not released back into society, but instead were kept for ICE, to come and pick up when they were first arrested, then
they wouldn't have committed more crimes.
Exactly. And not only that, but I hate to say it, but, if ICE was allowed to do their jobs and these sanctuary cities actually reported when they arrested an illegal immigrant so that ICE could come and pick them up and deport them, hate to say it, you wouldn't be arresting as many people in these ICE raids. Because imagine if 80 of these people were already deported, that's 80 less out of the 225. Yeah. That makes ICE's job easier. And I'm sure that when they do these raids, they are very worried about people fighting back. I'm sure that in the past, ICE agents have been, injured in the line of duty in trying to arrest these people if they try to escape at all. I'm absolutely certain that an ICE raid isn't them just knocking on the door, a person walking out, and then they just handcuff them right then and there. And so, it's more dangerous for ICE when these people are released back into society. And so that's why it is so important that we do fight against these sanctuary cities that are allowing these people to just roam free.
Yeah. But moving on from there, we're going to now talk about the Caravan. This was a big issue about 2 weeks ago now. What was it, 2-3 weeks ago?
3 weeks ago now.
And they finally arrived. On Friday, a group of 50 remaining illegal aliens that were part of the Pueblo Sin Fronteras caravan from Central America has reached the U.S. border. They have turned themselves in and have requested asylum. The majority come from Honduras in the wake of some of the highest homicide rates in the world from gang violence and instability following the controversial re-election of President Juan Orlando Hernandez. Others come from El Salvador or Guatemala. Just Thursday, the Associated Press reported the Caravan numbered at 500. At its peak, reports of the Caravan numbered around 1,500. Jose Maria Garcia, director of Juventud 2000, a migrant assistance organization, said that more are still expected to come in the following days. And this is something, that was reported on Friday. I don't know, the 2 days since has more arrived.
I haven't heard any reports of any more.
If they have, it hasn't been reported.
If anything, it's been in groups of like maybe 2 or 3 or 5 at max, which at that point you wouldn't notice the difference between that or any other like people that are trying to cross the border. So, I mean, let's not kid ourselves here also. The Caravan largely did break up. I mean, the 50 people that showed up, that was it for the people that actually were like continuing to go forward. There's going to be some stragglers, but 1,500 people didn't show up at the border at once. It was 50. And so our efforts to, get rid of that Caravan largely worked, except for the fact that there are still 50 remaining. Now, the question is, what do we do with these 50 people? I think you know the answer to that. It'll wait to be seen exactly what is done with these people. I doubt that they're all going to be given asylum. I'm sure some of them probably will, unfortunately. That's just how the way things work right now. But, yeah, for the most part, I don't really know what else I was going to say with there, but yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, the Caravan was neutralized, and, we showed that we weren't going to tolerate these kind of caravans of people just marching into the country. But, as we said when this was first happening, these caravans do pose a giant risk. If
Absolutely.
One can be successful, it's going to show to other people in these countries that they can just walk in as well. And they didn't, receive much pushback going through Mexico.
No, Mexico did almost nothing to stop them at all.
So it really is upon ourselves to stop them. And, it's why Trump readied the National Guard if needed to even stop these caravans from coming. But it looks like, for the moment at least, most of the worries are over. But who knows? Maybe that will change.
I mean, if 3 weeks ago when the Caravan was like all the talk in the news, if you had told, if someone had told us they said only 50 of them are actually going to make it to the border, does that make you feel better or worse about the situation? Everybody would have said, yeah, that makes me feel better about it. So that's the way that I'm looking at this. Now, I will say that you do need to make an example of these 50 people and not give them any asylum in order to discourage in the future people trying to do the exact same
make
thing.
them know that they can't come here. But, I mentioned that at its peak it was reported at around 1,500, but there was conflicting reports that was not 1,500 people, but rather 1,500 families.
It was 1,500 people.
So
the reports that said families were incorrect. I mean, there's pictures and people counted it. It was only about 1,500 to around 2,000 at max.
Okay. So, some good stuff there, stopping them at least. Moving on, though, there was an incident near Tucson that we need to touch on. On Wednesday, Tucson Border Patrol agents teamed up with air support from U.S. Customs and Border Protection to locate a group of heavily armed men that camera surveillance noticed walking north 17 miles from the Arizona-Mexico border. Helicopters from Yuma and Tucson were dispatched with Border Patrol Search, Trauma, and Rescue, or otherwise known as BORSTAR agents, to make heavy contact. BORSTAR agents located an 18-year-old Mexican national hiding in a nearby bush. The K-9 unit with them also found 5 AK variant rifles and a 9mm pistol. After transporting the first illegal alien away, other agents found 2 additional Mexican nationals aged 43 and 24. The aliens are believed to be part of a drug cartel rip crew that aims to steal or rip the drug loads of rival cartels while in transit. The Tucson region is ruled by Los Salazar, a regional cartel aligned with the Sinaloa Federation.
And so this happened in Arizona, right?
Yes.
And yet these people...
17 miles deep.
I would assume these people were just able to walk across the border with heavily armed weapons?
Yeah, what they found is these guys had heavy supplies for them to just trek through, the desert into Arizona. And I bring up the idea of the Rip Crew because what they're believed to be there for is they're waiting to stop any other cartel drug shipment moving across as well.
Right. And
then they take their weapons and raid them and steal them for everything.
Possibly kill them, I assume.
Now, I can't confirm that that's the reason why they're there, but it's heavily suspected with the amount of armaments that they had with them. 5 AK variant rifles among 3 guys they found. Now, there might have been more people there, but still.
I would assume that any smart drug cartel, if they're going to be sending a Rip Crew out to try to steal the drug loads of rival cartels, you're going to send more than 3 people. Yeah. Especially if you have 5 AK variant rifles and a pistol. I mean, you can assume that a guy can carry a pistol and an AK rifle.
So it's likely some individuals in the group got away.
It's likely some got away. It's also likely that, and I'm just going by my knowledge of stuff, I would also assume that these guys probably have weapons stashed out there around areas that they know they're going to wait for. So, to assume that, it's just this one guy's at this one time. No, this stuff happens all the time. And, all it takes is for one of those things to go south, shots get fired, someone gets killed, maybe it's a drug cartel person, maybe it's an innocent bystander, who knows. Point still stands that cartel drug activity and violence has already crossed the border. It crossed the border a very long time ago, and this is just some of the stuff that we still have to deal with.
But we're supposed to pretend that every single person crossing the border is just some sort of poor, starving family that wants to, improve the country. When we have an open border, we have instances like this where, foreign nationals with heavy weapons can just march across into your country and do as they please. And yeah, if they came across, an American citizen while they were just trekking around, who knows how that would have ended. Not good, and they're not sending their best.
No.
So, moving on, MS-13 this week ordered hits on police officers. According to a memo obtained by the New York Post, MS-13 has directed its New York members to take out a cop. In Hempstead, a town on Long Island terrorized by the gang, police on Wednesday were tipped off by a credible informant who said that the gang felt that they need to make a statement and specifically kill a Hempstead cop. Quote, "The police have been making too many arrests, and it's time to take the streets back and take out a cop like we do in El Salvador," the memo quotes the organizer of the directive. Any members of MS-13 was authorized to kill a police officer, the informant said. Police officers not only in Hempstead, but all across New York are on alert for the potential of an attack.
So again, you have foreign nationals that are part of one of the most violent gangs, I could say, in the world, are openly saying, by the way, we need to kill some cops. Yep. And anyone that's part of our gang, you're all allowed to do this. And this is, Long Island has been terrorized by MS-13 for a very long time. That's the reason why, a lot of the ICE raids against MS-13 have been conducted on Long Island. It's just one of those hotbeds of activity.
Yeah.
And, as they said, not only the cops in Hempstead are on high alert, but all across New York State. Because it's not just Long Island where they're dealing with these people.
And
it's
these
all
guys,
across the area.
They're not going to take the time to figure out what precinct these cops work in.
No, if they see a cop,
that you
they're
have
going to kill
some sort of, you're part of the fraternal order of police officers on your vehicle, they'll just, deal with you.
I mean, there's a story that happened earlier this week. And this wasn't really, I don't think this was immigration related at all, but, there was 2 cops that were just sitting in a in a restaurant eating lunch, I believe, and a guy walked up and shot both of them. I mean, there is a war on police in this country, and whether or not you want to say that the people fighting the police are, left-wing protesters or Black Lives Matter, or, you can even go so far as to say it's gangs, especially gangs from South America. There's a lot of people in this country that do not like the cops. And so I would be very afraid if I was a New York police officer, or I should say a police officer in New York, whether I was in just, upstate New York, Hempstead, Long Island, New York City, doesn't matter. I'd be scared off my butt.
Yeah.
For something like that to happen, which just goes to show exactly how much of a problem MS-13 is, and the fact that we need to deal with it ASAP.
Most definitely. So the next thing that I wanted to move on to is how the court shut down an anti-sanctuary city measure that the Trump administration imposed. The 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago ruled Thursday that the Trump administration could not withhold public safety grants to cities with sanctuary policies for the protection of the illegal aliens. The decision said that the administration exceeds its authority in establishing a new condition for cities to qualify for the grants. It upheld a temporary injunction issued by a lower court judge this last September. The Trump administration in July imposed a condition that cities receiving public safety grants must agree to inform federal agents when aliens in the country illegally are about to be released from police detention. Chicago itself is one of the cities that sued the administration over the action. Hours after the ruling, Trump tweeted, quote, "Sanctuary cities release at least 142 gang members across the United States, making it easy for them to commit all forms of violent crimes where none would have existed. We are doing a great job of law enforcement, but things such as this makes safety in America difficult."
You know, I really tend to think that we are getting to the point where the Trump administration's biggest enemy is these courts, more so than anything else, because I don't know how anyone in their right mind could side with the way that those judges sided in this case, especially when it comes to sanctuary cities. I mean, here in Texas, when we had SB4, it was essentially saying that if you support sanctuary cities and you advocate it for it, we're going to throw you in jail. And that's what we really need to start doing with these people, with these judges on these courts. If a judge issues a ruling that allows a violent criminal alien to be released into the public, and then that person goes and injures, rapes, murders somebody, that person, that judge, should be held liable for that. I absolutely think that that needs to start happening. And if you start doing that, the shift that you will see in the courts towards the pro-Trump side will be like that.
Yeah, but it really goes to show that we are receiving a lot of setbacks in regards to our battles against sanctuary cities because of the courts.
Exactly.
So moving on to the last thing that we have for immigration this week, I wanted to get into a new study on immigrants that came out this week. According to a new study by the Center for Immigration Studies, which is very good, new immigrants to the United States are twice as likely to live in poverty as native-born Americans. This is despite an increase of immigrants with college degrees, 34% in 2007 to 49% in 2017, and a decrease without a high school diploma from 34% in 2007 to 16% in 2017. Despite the increase in education for immigrants, labor force enrollment fell from 73% in 2007 to 67% in 2017 amongst immigrants. The median income of new arrivals was $18,402 in 2017, which is slightly lower than in 2007. Additionally, since 2007, food stamp usage by new immigrants has more than tripled from 4% in 2007 to 13% in 2017, which is a higher rate than among the native population, which is 10% usage amongst native-born citizens. Medicaid usage by immigrants has increased from 6% in 2007 to 17% in 2017, which is also a higher rate of usage than among the native population, which uses it at a rate of 13%. So it really goes to show, even though these immigrants have more education, they are less apt to, function in American society. They find themselves twice as likely to live in poverty, and they're using assistance programs more than Americans are even using assistance programs, which really goes to show immigrants aren't really making this country better. They're actually struggling now more than ever, and they're costing us more than ever.
Yeah, and not only that, but the whole increase in education for immigrants. A lot of that has to do with immigrants that are getting education in the United States. They come over here in order to get their education.
Yeah.
And we know that a lot of that has to do with, let's face it here. A lot of it has to do with the fact that people who are immigrants are getting, they're allowed to go to college using in-state tuition in a lot of states. I think, was it Arizona last week we talked about? They changed it.
They will not receive in-state tuition rates, but they aren't being charged, I think, fully the cost of out-of-state tuition.
Right, and so that makes it easier for immigrants. I'm just going to use the broad brush of the word.
Well, that
immigrant.
was DACA recipients that we're talking about.
Right, and that's also part of the case here is they are including. I'm certain that this study isn't done just of legal or illegal. It's done of just immigrants in general. If you were to divide it amongst legal and illegal, you'd probably see slightly different numbers here. But the biggest number here that is put out for me is the whole labor force the labor force enrollment number. That's the number that jumps out to me. 73% in 2007 to 67% in 2017.
A 6% drop-off is pretty dramatic.
And not only that, but the median income number, 18,402 in 2017, which is lower than 2007. With the inflation and stuff that we have seen, you're telling me that in the last 10 years, the median income of immigrants has actually dropped, whereas the income for everybody else has gone up?
Which is below the poverty line, which suggests that they're going to need more public assistance.
Exactly.
And legal immigrants qualify for that.
Which is part of the reason why you see increases in the percentage that are on food stamps and other, Medicaid usage and stuff like that. So all these numbers, they do really make sense when you start to look at it, which proves the point that we need to say is you don't need to keep bringing these people here knowing that they stand such a high chance of essentially being a drain on society.
Yeah.
Both, I guess I could use the word financially and emotionally, culturally, whatever you want to say.
It shows that we need to have restrictions on legal immigration coming into the country because we're at this point now just importing dependents of the state. We're importing international welfare shoppers.
Exactly.
And they're taking advantage of it because they know they can. So, frustrating stuff, but it's important to know these numbers. Moving on from there, let's get into some 2018 midterm elections news.
Got some interesting stuff here in this section this week.
Yep. So the first thing that we want to talk about is Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, which receives $500 million in taxpayer funds yearly, has announced that they plan on spending $30 million during the 2018 midterms. If you remember, Planned Parenthood spent more than $38 million during the 2016 election to back Hillary Clinton and other Democrats. So according to Life News, Planned Parenthood's off-Broadway rendition of Big Spender, which did you even know that taxpayers fund an off-Broadway musical for Planned Parenthood?
I do now.
You do now. So Planned Parenthood's off-Broadway rendition of Big Spender will be shown in Florida, Michigan, and Nevada to target up to 2.5 million voters to be mobilized for the 2018 midterm elections. Deidre Schiffling, executive director of Planned Parenthood's Action Fund, said, quote, "The Trump-Pence administration has rolled out discriminatory rules and policies that undermine our basic rights and freedoms. To win in 2018, we need to channel the unprecedented energy and activism we have seen in response to these attacks towards winning on the ballot box." To close out, Planned Parenthood aborts around 320,000 unborn babies annually.
This kind of goes back to what I said earlier in this show about the whole cat lady thing. The type of person that's going to go to the off-Broadway rendition of Big Spender, knowing full well that Planned Parenthood is the one that's hosting it, is going to be, again, those exact same type of people. Those are people that are already energized to vote Democrat in 2018. They're already energized to hate Republicans. And, I just don't think that anything Planned Parenthood's going to do regarding this, this off-Broadway rendition is really going to make that much of a difference at all. I hate to say it, but it's not.
It's insanity that a publicly funded institution like Planned Parenthood can go and take the money that it receives and spend it on political campaigns.
Exactly. And, that goes back to the whole defund Planned Parenthood thing. Whether or not you support abortion, I know you support it more than I do. You tend to be more, pro-choice, and I'm more pro-life. I think both of us can agree that Planned Parenthood should not be using taxpayer money that they receive in order to be funding a off-Broadway rendition of a show in order to try to, as you just said, fund Democrat and liberal politicians in the upcoming midterms.
It's insane, but people don't really understand this stuff is going on, but it is.
Now, the next story that we have is out of the Senate race in Arizona, there's been a new poll that has been released in which it shows Kelly Ward, the person that we support in this race, has the lead. A new ABC poll of the Arizona Senate race found the following. In the Republican primary, Kelly Ward was in the lead with 36% of the vote, whereas Martha McSally is at 27% and Sheriff Joe Arpaio is last with 22%. 15% remain undecided. The same poll, however, found that Arpaio had a 55% approval rating in the state. So that shows you that the state likes him as a person, does not want him as their senator.
Yeah.
However, here's something else that's interesting. The poll showed that Democrat challenger Kyrsten Sinema is in the lead in the general election with a 48-42 lead over McSally, a 50-40 lead over Kelly Ward, and a 59-33 lead over Joe Arpaio, which is probably the reason why they don't want to pick him as their candidate, because they know that he would probably lose.
I think he would lose if
he definitely would lose, absolutely. Now, that seems like that's all bad, but there is some internals of the poll that really need to be pointed out as to why I don't think this poll is entirely accurate. The poll found that 59% of independents in Arizona have either a slightly disapproval or a strong disapproval of Trump. Meaning, do you really think that Trump is at 59% disapproval among independents, whereas independents were the ones that voted for him in the 2018 election? I strongly do not think that that is the case. I really don't think that's the case at all.
I think it's possible to have over 50% disapproval.
But do you think it's at 59% disapproval among independents?
That does seem unusually high.
It's at least 5 points higher than it is, which means if you start adjusting all the internals in order to get the case,
I don't think Sinema has a 10-point lead over Ward.
No, she does not have a 10-point lead over Ward. I can see her with a 15-point
I can understand giving her the lead. I can understand it being close.
And remember, a lot of polls are not designed to actually show what people believe. They are showed to tell people what to believe. Polls are not existence to show, hey, here's where things currently stand. These polls are created and designed to, promote a narrative. And the narrative is, by the way, Republicans, you're going to lose Arizona. See, you're losing. See. I mean, ABC was also the poll that had Hillary up 12% a month before the election. Let's, remember that there. But yeah, if you actually look at the internals of this poll, the numbers are kind of wacky. I would say that if anything, it's probably close to being tied. I can understand, as you said, giving Kyrsten Sinema the lead in this poll. It's going to be a close race. Let's not kid ourselves there. But does she have a 10-point lead over Kelly Ward? Hell no. She probably maybe has a 1-point lead at most right now. And when it actually comes down to it, who's going to win in November? Republicans probably going to win by about 3%. That's my prediction.
Yeah. Moving on from that poll, though, let's talk about a poll in regards to our home state of Texas. On Wednesday, Quinnipiac released a Texas Senate poll that showed incumbent Republican Senator Ted Cruz was only 3 points ahead of Democratic Representative Beto O'Rourke. So that comes out to Cruz has 47% support, and Beto has 44% support. So Beto wins amongst Democrats 87-9, and he wins amongst independents 51-37.
That's the number I call bullshit on, but continue.
While Cruz gets Republicans 88-6. Cruz's approval amongst men is 51-40, while Beto wins amongst women 47-43. Cruz currently has an approval rating of 47-45. Is favorability of 46-44, while Beto has favorabilities of 30-17, with 53% of Texans saying they do not know enough about him to make an opinion. So that is one of the big things. Beto just isn't very well known.
Yeah, Ted Cruz is extremely well known in the state.
Yeah. Democrats have not won a Texas Senate or governor seat since 1990. Trump won Texas by 9 points in 2016. Romney won Texas by 16 in 2012. Cruz initially in 2012 received 57% of the vote, winning by 16 points as well as Romney did. Mm-hmm. The last thing I want to say is, according to Real Clear Politics, if Trump has an approval rating of 42% in Texas on Election Day, Cruz has an 80% chance of re-election. According to the Quinnipiac poll, Texans disapprove of Trump 52-43.
I'm going to give my official prediction for the Texas Senate race in November. My prediction is, obviously, Ted Cruz is going to win. My prediction is he gets 55% of the vote, and Beto O'Rourke gets 44% of the vote, with 1% of people voting for third-party candidates. That is my official prediction. I predict that he wins by about 9 to 11% this time around. The reason I say that is because Ted Cruz is a lot more well-liked than Donald Trump is in the state of Texas. I mean, you saw how we know a lot of people that did not like Trump at all, that favored Ted Cruz in the primary and continued to favor Ted Cruz. A lot of them voted for libertarians or sat out the 2016 presidential election. There's a reason why Trump won Texas by only 9 points when, we won by 16 in 2012. Yet in 2014, Greg Abbott wins by 20%. And if you look at the primary results from the Texas primary, it was, again, if you look at total votes cast by Republicans and total votes cast by Democrats, it was, again, about 60-40 was the split between Republican and Democrat. Hillary Clinton, as I said, in 2016, did worse as a percentage of the vote than Barack Obama did in Texas in 2008. And the reason this all comes due is for the fact that there are a lot of Republicans in the state that hate Donald Trump. Those same people really love Ted Cruz. And so, again, you have polls like this that are designed to be gaslit for people. Ted Cruz has at least a 7-point lead, I would say, right now in the lead. And then on election day, he's probably going to win by, as I said, about 9 to 11%. The number that I said earlier when I called that out, that Beto O'Rourke winning independents 51-37, yet his favorability in the state's only 30% with 17% disapproval, and 53% of Texans don't even know enough about him to make an opinion. A lot of those numbers seem really, really whack for where their actual poll numbers stand right now. And so I would say that Beto's number of 44 is pretty accurate, but they're definitely downplaying what Cruz's actual support in this state is. It's got to be at least 55 right now.
I disagree with you slightly.
It's because you're wrong, that's why.
I think that this can be a close race.
Oh, it's going to be a close race, but it's not going to be a blowout.
In the state hate Ted Cruz as well.
Yeah, and those same people already support Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, and I personally know Republicans that have switched over to supporting Beto, crazily enough.
Not that I've heard of. Are you lying to me?
No.
I think you're lying to me.
I'm not lying.
I don't know a single person that's done that.
I don't know. Vote your conscience.
Enzo is lying right now to try to blackpill on this episode in case anyone's actually wondering what he's doing.
I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to say that Democrats are making momentum in Texas.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're probably going to win in 2024.
And Beto is one of the best candidates that they've had in a long time. At least, looks good and comes off pretty well.
I can't wait for him to just get demolished in November. It's going to be hilarious.
Yeah.
The Democrats are going to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars, and yet Cruz is going to sell the victory like he normally does. That's what's going to end up happening for anyone who actually knows the politics of this state right now. Now, that being said, Texas is still going to go blue within the next decade, and then you're never going to win anything in the state again. But in terms of, that being this year, hell no, it's not going to happen. Anyone would be crazy to actually think that. But moving on from Texas to a different state, we have some good news out of Utah. Delegates at the Utah Republican Convention held a vote to see who they would pick as their party's nominee for the upcoming election to replace outgoing Senator Orrin Hatch. Mitt Romney, who everyone thought was just going to sail to victory in that race, actually came in second place among the delegate vote, receiving only 49%, where State Representative Mike Kennedy won 51% of the vote. They needed 60% in order to secure the nomination at the convention. Because neither person did it, it heads to the primary where voters will decide. Now, I still think Mitt Romney is going to win when the voters actually decide it, but it really goes to show you that the Republican Party of Utah isn't exactly in lockstep as we thought they were in wanting to get Mitt Romney as their guy. They're very divided.
Yeah, and Romney hasn't been campaigning very hard up to this point, so now that he is forced to take this to primary election, he's got the money to splash in a campaign like this. And he wants the position, he wants the platform of Senate.
And a lot of people, Republicans in the state of Utah, are going to support him. And so you have that already off the bat. We saw the support that Evan McMullen got, or I should say Egg McMuffin got, back in 2016. And that was simply because the guy was a Mormon. I mean, Romney's probably going to win that race. I will say that there are also a lot of people in Utah that do view him as a carpetbagger, and they don't like the fact that he's just, running in saying, by the way, I'm going to be your next senator, vote for me, and then they vote for him. I think it's going to be a closer race than people think. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I do still see Mitt Romney pulling ahead in that one, unfortunately for our side.
Yeah, I think Romney's going to win.
And whoever wins in that primary is going to win. It's Utah. Let's not kid ourselves. So you're not... Now, the question is, who would be better, a Democrat from Utah or Mitt Romney?
It's not much different.
Exactly. So if you're a Utah Republican listening to this show, I strongly urge you to vote for Mike Kennedy in the Republican primary that's upcoming.
Yeah. So moving on now to the bottom of the stack news that happened this week. The first thing that we want to talk about is Barbara Bush died this week.
Yes. On Tuesday, former First Lady Barbara Bush passed away at the age of 92. This comes just days after it was announced that she was coming off of medical treatment and would instead focus on comfort care due to her failing health. She got married to former President George H.W. Bush in January 1945. They totaled 73 years of marriage. Her son, former President George W. Bush, said the following, quote, "My dear mother has passed at the age of 92. Laura, Barbara, Jenna, and I are sad, but our souls are settled because we know hers was. Barbara Bush was a fabulous First Lady and a woman unlike any other, who brought levity, love, and literacy to millions. To us, she was so much more. Mom kept us on our toes and kept us laughing until the end. I'm a lucky man that Barbara Bush was my mother. Our family will miss her dearly, and we thank you all for your prayers and good wishes." So, last week we talked about on the show how they said they're moving her off of comfort care, and I think we even made the prediction that she probably didn't have too much longer to live. I did not expect her to die so quickly, but, she is in a better place now. She doesn't have to worry about failing health. It's sad to see her die, and, as much as I don't like the Bush family very much, my thoughts and prayers are with them during this time of grievance.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's move on now to this lawsuit.
So, do you remember back a few months ago, we were talking on the show when former DNC chairwoman Donna Brazile released her memoirs or her book?
Yes.
In which they laid out the fact that they believe that the Hillary Clinton campaign was funneling money through the DNC by essentially skirting campaign laws that, limit the amount of contributions a person can make per person, instead taking money that was given to the DNC, funneling it through their state into the federal DNC, and then from there to the Clinton campaign.
Yeah, I remember all this stuff.
There's a lawsuit that has now been filed regarding that. The Committee to Defend the President, which is a pro-Trump political group, has filed an official complaint with the Federal Election Commission claiming that the Hillary Victory Fund solicited cash from high-powered donors and illegally funneled those funds through state chapters and then back to the DNC in order to skirt federal donation limits. The group's lawsuit claims that over $84 million was laundered using that process. So this is kind of just...
It's definitely not an irrelevant sum of
yeah,
money.
this is just kind of an update story. I mean, we'll have to follow along to see where it goes from here, but you do have evidence. I mean, Donna Brazile, from her mouth herself, said that this is what they were doing.
Donna Brazile, the lady that gets Clinton debate questions beforehand.
She was a pro-Hillary Clinton person, yet she herself even admitted, yeah, this is what they were doing. Now at least we have a number to go along with it. $84 million.
Well, originally, Donna Brazile wanted Joe Biden to be the one, but he didn't even run in 2016. But, Brazile was involved in the DNC, and as she saw all of this stuff going on around her, she just couldn't handle it anymore, which is why she wrote the book.
Yeah.
But the book goes a long way to show that this is what Clinton was up to.
And so, we'll see where that goes.
Which ties into the next thing that we wanted to talk about, which is Hillary's popularity has plunged. According to a new poll released by the Wall Street Journal and NBC News this week, former presidential candidate and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's popularity is at a record low. Only 27% of those polled had a very or somewhat positive view of Clinton. That is lower than Donald Trump, who received 35%. Her previous low was 30% in August of 2017. At the time of election, 40% of Americans had a very or somewhat positive view of Clinton. So, you know, as time is going on, she's lost a lot of support for her.
And, you know, this is kind of funny because it's clear to anyone that Hillary Clinton has lost popularity. These poll numbers only prove that. But it's funny because it seems like Democrats in Congress, Democrats in D.C., just the Democrat Party in general, still tries to be we're the pro-Clinton party, we stand behind her 100% for things that she's done. Yet only 27% of people in America, essentially, actually like her at this point.
Even somewhat have a positive view of her.
More people, you know, according to this poll, I mean, you know, you can say whether or not you think that the 35% number for Donald Trump is accurate. Even so, he still scores 8 points higher than she does in the same poll. That's really saying something if you're, you know, a DNC operative. So that's really all I have to say about that.
Moving on now to something completely unrelated, but still very topical. Starbucks is going to be closing 8,000 stores that they have for a day of racial bias training. They'll be closing the 8,000 U.S. locations on May 29th for a day of, quote, unconscious bias training. The news of mass trainings comes in response to the April 12th incident in which two black men in Philadelphia were arrested in a Starbucks while they were waiting for a friend. Starbucks CEO Kevin Johnson said, quote, "I've spent the last few days in Philadelphia with my leadership team listening to the community, learning from what we did wrong and the steps we need to fix it. While this is not limited to Starbucks, we're committed to being part of the solution. Closing our stores for racial bias training is just one step in a journey that requires dedication from every level of our company and partnership in local communities." The curriculum they're using for this training was developed by Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative, Sherilyn Ifill of the NAACP's Legal Defense and Education Fund, Heather McGee of Demos, Jonathan Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League, and former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder.
Boy, those all sound like a bunch of right-leaning organizations, don't they?
Yeah. I made sure to include all those names because once you start hearing who's actually behind this, and this is, 8,000 stores, you imagine you have at least 5 employees per store.
Oh, way more than that.
Yeah. It's a lot of people are going to be receiving some trainings.
And that whole incident, I mean, it's kind of blown up over the last week or so, but it's just, I don't really care about it at all. A lot of people do. I think it's hilarious that a lot of black people are trolling them by going into Starbucks and asking for free coffee.
And it's working often.
Yeah, some of them are working. I know there was one guy, I think his nickname was Hotep Jesus or something like that. He went in. He's a black conservative guy. He even went in. He was like, I want one for reparations, and they gave it to him. And then he went on Fox News. He's like, yeah, it's this liberal white guilt and stuff. I just took advantage of it to get a free coffee. And
they know that they can take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I know there's a couple other YouTubers that even live stream themselves going around different cities trying to get free coffees. As you said, some of them even worked. We were watching some of those videos.
There's been studies on things like, racial bias training and stuff of that ilk that shows that, people become more racist because they have to go through these training events. Yeah. If, say you're a white person that works at Starbucks and, May 29th come and you get to spend, 5-6 hours learning about this, it doesn't really make you very sympathetic to the issue. I mean, it just makes you resentful.
There's that picture that's kind of gone viral, the one Starbucks employee who's just standing straight-faced trying to ignore this protester that's screaming in his face with the microphone. A lot of people have been using that to be all this is the moment that Jimmy found out that Trump was right. Or this is the moment that Charlie became a Trump supporter. Stuff like that. Obviously, there's different interpretations that people have used as that meme. Point still stands, if you're just your average soy boy latte maker who works at Starbucks, and now all of a sudden you got to sit through slides and slides and slides and slides and lecture after lecture after lecture about racial bias training, the only thing you're thinking of is, I'm hungry, I want to go home. And that's the only thing they're going to care about. And it's not going to change a damn thing at all.
Yeah. So, moving on, we were just talking about black people getting reparations at Starbucks. Democrats actually want black people to have reparations at large. On Monday, a wealthy Democratic donor club met at the Democracy Alliance Spring Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, to talk about the fight for reparations by 2022.
4 years from now.
4 years from now. The reception, titled Way to Win 2022 Victory Party, was attended by top Democrat officials such as DNC Chairman Tom Perez, former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, and Representatives Raul Grivala of Arizona and Mark Pocan of Wisconsin. Quote, "It's 2022, and we are celebrating policy victories across the nation. Medicare for all, free college, and next on the agenda is reparations. Take a ride in our time machine to hear from the true political geniuses who made this happen." And that is what the invitation for the event says. They also predict a Texas Democratic governor and a 2024 presidential victory by 38 electoral votes for the Democratic Party.
I can see the Democrats winning by 38 electoral votes in 2024. I think 2024 is a little bit too soon for a Texas governor race, especially this upcoming year.
If you look at, like, Quinnipiac, that poll we talked about, Cruz and Beto, they also had the Abbott race on there, and they had Abbott up 50-40 over that Lupe woman he's running against, so it's still a ways away.
Yeah, as much as I was kind of like making fun of you there when we were talking about the Ted Cruz-Beto poll, at the same time, the Democrats that are or I should say the Democrat candidate, that Lupe chick running for governor, she's really not trying very hard at all. I mean, Greg Abbott's got this thing in the bag. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins by 20, but Ted Cruz only wins by like 9 or 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just, pointing that out there. Now, will there be a Texas Democratic governor probably in the 2020s? Absolutely. The state's going to flip blue. We already know that. By 2024, that's still kind of iffy. Local state races tend to be a bigger victory for Republicans than national races in Texas do, for like senator and representatives and stuff like that. So, but continue, please.
Yeah. So, Democracy Alliance is one of the biggest donor clubs, with donor conferences previously featuring House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Senators Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. Mm-hmm. The event also featured prominent donor groups Solidarity Network and the Center for Popular Democracy. The Center for Popular Democracy is actually an organization that has an anti-Trump network that spans across 32 different states that has funding of around $80 million. And I believe they also have around 50 or so organizations they like co-sponsor as well. So, I was reading last night the Center for Popular Democracy's website, and, it's the most radical leftist stuff that you could imagine. I read Solidarity Network's website as well, the same things. This is where the money for the Democrats is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, when you have the chairman of the DNC at the event that talks about the fight for reparations, it really shows you where they are focused on, what they're aiming for. And even if they don't come out and say it, usually when they talk about, oh, we just want to get health care for Americans and stuff like that. It's still in the back of their mind, the fight for reparations, taking money away from people that weren't slaveholders and giving it to people that weren't slaves.
And the question is, what do they even mean by reparations? Are they talking about just straight up giving money to people? Are they talking about, social engineering programs? Are they talking about, increasing affirmative action, things like that? It's yet to be seen. The definition of what reparations means. But I don't think
they're against any of that stuff.
No, they probably are in favor of all of it. Yeah. Granted, they know that some things politically they're not going to be able to get done.
They just know right now they can't really talk in public about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's still, public support for reparations still isn't there.
Which is why they have to keep that in the back burner.
Yeah. So let's close out the bottom of the stack with this last story out of California before we get into some current year college craziness.
So, a California school district is not letting their parents take their kids out of the LGBT sex ed. The Orange County School District said that parents who disagree with the state's LGBT positions, quote, may not excuse their children from this instruction. California passed the Healthy Youth Act in 2015, which aims to equip students to develop a, quote, healthy attitudes on gender and social orientation. It also says it will inform students about the, quote, effectiveness and safety of all FDA-approved contraceptive methods and facilitate objective discussion about parenting, adoption, and abortion. Orange County Department of Education General Counsel Ronald Wenkart said that the law's opt-out provision, quote, does not apply to instruction, materials, or programming that discusses gender, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, discrimination, harassment, bullying, intimidation, relationships, or family, and does not discuss human reproductive organs. He also cites judicial precedent to claim that, quote, parents do not have a constitutional right to excuse their children from portions of the school curriculum that they find objectionable. Translation: we are going to brainwash your children, and there is nothing that you can do about it.
We have the right to teach your children whatever we want, and it doesn't matter what you think, because they're not yours, they're ours. That's pretty much what they're saying.
That is how they view it. Unfortunately, this is out of Orange County, which, Orange County, you were doing so good with your sanctuary state stuff, but then you got to go and screw it up like this. Really, people? Really?
Well, when it still comes to the school districts, you're still going to have
super liberal, I understand.
A super liberal base there.
Especially in that area
even
of California.
In places that are, generally red. But, yeah, this is just frightening stuff. I remember, months ago we were talking about kind of similar things that Canada was doing to this, where, they got to the point in Canada where if you don't agree with your child, being trans or whatever, you just lose your children. And, California pretty much is saying you lose your children when it comes to us teaching about LGBT sex education.
Exactly.
Which is, growing up for myself, like, my parents didn't let me go to sex education like it, is generally mandated. My parents were actually some of the, conscientious objectors to the state doing so. And, if we lived in California and it was today's day, they weren't even allowed to do that.
I just remember in sex ed they were telling the story about a donut. You eat the donut, you spit out the donut. If someone else was to eat that spit out donut, they were like, that's what it's like to have sex with someone who's had sex with someone, for the spread of STDs. And even then I was like, okay, number one, I understand the point you're making, but number two, really? Really? We should probably move on to the next story, shouldn't we?
Yeah. With that said, let's move on to some current year college craziness. Current year college craziness, segment of the show where we talk about the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses here and abroad, but predominantly here because, the craziest colleges all happen to be in the United States, apparently. And for the first current year college craziness story, we're going to Fresno State University.
Yes, earlier in the show we talked about the death of former First Lady Barbara Bush. Well, there's a professor from Fresno State University who has a little bit to say about that. Fresno State University professor Randa Gerard tweeted Tuesday that former First Lady Barbara Bush, quote, was a generous and smart and amazing racist who, along with her husband, raised a war criminal. She also said that she was happy about Barbara Bush's death because it would likely make George H.W. Bush very sad. She added, after people started talking about her quote, she added, quote, fuck out of here with your nice words. She then afterwards put her tweets on protective mode, and since she is a verified liberal on Twitter, that potentially violates her terms of even keeping her blue checkmark by keeping her tweets unprotected. It's one of those rules Twitter has. They actually do enforce that one equally on both conservatives and liberals, and just people in general. So I'll say one thing about Twitter being good about one thing. But back to Gerard. She describes herself as a Muslim American woman and is frequently seen with a keffiyeh, which is a scarf, which is commonly used to express solidarity with Palestinians. She was born in Kuwait and moved to the U.S. with her family after the Gulf War. According to the Sacramento Bee, Giroir makes $100,000 per year as a tenured professor and was placed on leave last year for tweeting, quote, "Trump must hang." Fresno State announced that they were opening investigation into Giroir for the recent comments regarding Barbara Bush. She has since tweeted that she is, quote, currently on leave from Fresno State. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the people that are teaching your children at university. Do you think this woman deserves to be paid $100,000 per year as a tenured professor?
No. But one of the weird things for me on this is just like, so she's attacking Barbara Bush, the husband of George H.W. Bush, and she's from Kuwait.
Yeah.
Under H.W. Bush, the Persian Gulf War happened, and we liberated Kuwait from Iraqi invasion.
Mm-hmm.
You think that she would at least have kind of an appreciative attitude towards us doing that? I mean, generally I'm against foreign interventions, but at least in this case, like, it's pretty demonstrable Iraq was in the wrong in what they did in invading Kuwait, and yet she still hates them.
And there's something else about Professor Giroir here. There was an article that was written yesterday that I saw someone shared on Facebook that has some old video of Giroir talking, where she's talking about Fresno's agriculture industry, and she says, quote, "A lot of farmers are now Trump supporters and just fucking stupid." And in others, she says she can't stand the white heteropatriarchy. She also says, quote, "I don't give a fuck. I'm buying guns. I'm an American. I'm buying guns. The other side is like doing some stupid shit. I'm going to do some stupid shit. I'm tired of like being the bigger person. Literally am usually." By the way, she's like 300 pounds. She's fat as fuck. But she says, continuing, "But like, I'm also just tired of the left being like fucking stupid and being like, no, we have to like be gentle, and no, don't be fucking gentle." She later then goes on and attacks some kid named Spencer, asking why Spencer's house is still standing. They said that the Spencer kid was probably a kid that was in one of her classrooms. She says, quote, in regards to the Spencer kid's house, quote, "It needs to be fucking broken into. People need to fucking throw grenades into it. I don't give a fuck." So, sorry for all that harsh language there, but this is who this woman is in her personal everyday life.
She makes $100,000 a year. She's
$100,000 a year advocating for throwing grenades into a guy's house because he's probably a Republican.
Yeah. Moving on, the other story that we have for Current Year College Crazes is actually a good thing. We didn't have too much for Current Year College Crazes this week.
Yeah.
But A&M shuts down 2 Chinese learning institutes. Texas A&M University has announced it's closing 2 Confucius Institutes located at its College Station and Prairie View campuses after a recent letter by Democrat Representative Henry Cuellar and Republican Representative Michael McCall flagged them as, quote, "a threat to U.S. national security," saying they serve as a platform for China's intelligence collection and political agenda. A major problem with the institutes is that the 5-year contract signed by the host academic institution gives the Chinese government total control over staffing and curriculum. According to a report from the NSA, teachers are paid and dispatched by the Chinese government, as are the institute's directors. American academic deans have no input into Confucius activities and course offerings. The actions follow the University of Chicago and Pennsylvania State University cutting their ties with China and their Confucius Institutes. The Confucius Institute was created to further Chinese language training and cultural programs. A 2017 study by the National Association of Scholars showed that there are more than 1,000 Confucius Institutes at colleges worldwide and 103 in the United States, along with over 500 in American high schools. So this is something I believe we've talked about this once.
We have, when Eric Burkhart was on the show.
Yeah, the threat that these Chinese institutes, these Confucius institutes have. So they are institutes that request to join your campus or whatever. They, become a part of your campus, and it is fully funded by the Chinese government. They set the curriculum. Every single person that works there, they control these people 100%, and it gives communist China a platform within American higher learning to disseminate propaganda as they
Exactly.
please.
And if you're wondering why so many universities are so quick to just let this happen, the same article that we were reading off of said that the Chinese government is giving about $100,000 to $150,000 to these universities in order to start these programs.
Yeah.
That's easy money for the universities. Of course they're going to take it.
All you have to do is, house their classes.
Yeah.
And, when you're a money-starved university and the offer, of millions of dollars from the Chinese government just so that you can, teach these classes comes, they don't turn it down. But, they kind of need to because, as we said, this is a threat to U.S. national security. It allows them to embed Communist Party cells in the United States. I was reading earlier an article from Foreign Policy about what was the university? I believe it was a university in Chicago where they had an entire Chinese communist cell embedded in the dormitories there. All of these people in the United States on the behalf of the Chinese government. And, I don't assume they have the best intentions for us.
And we know that they are taking information that's in the United States and giving it to China. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's such a big threat to national security.
Yeah.
We just allow these people just unfettered information to everything that they see and hear and can get their hands on, especially at college universities where that stuff, essentially is centered around. Yeah, it is a huge threat. So it's a good thing that A&M shut it down. I'd like to see more colleges shut them down too.
Yeah. But like we said, we don't have much for current college craziness. Sorry on that. But let's move on to some international news. Let's start off with Asia, where some of the biggest news this week actually is.
Yeah, so we got a lot of really big news coming out of the Koreas. A couple of big stories here. First off, before the upcoming summit between the U.S. and both North and South Korea, the Koreas have agreed to formally and permanently end the 68-year-old Korean War, which was only ended in a truce. So, a show of good faith by both sides, wanting to officially end this crisis. Would this have happened if Trump was not president? Probably not. In fact, I would say definitely not. Continuing on the next story, the news comes as it was revealed that CIA Director Mike Pompeo made a top-secret trip to Pyongyang over Easter weekend and personally met with Kim Jong-un. Now, if you remember, Mike Pompeo is kind of in line to be the next Secretary of State. He was technically not Secretary of State at the time he did this. Doesn't mean it was illegal. I mean, he can meet whatever he wants if the president tells him to meet with someone, so he didn't do anything wrong there. But it just goes to show you that even without being Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo is, helping us out. And the last thing, North Korea, and this is, I think, the biggest story. North Korea has also announced a freeze on their nuclear and ICBM missile testing programs. They've also announced the closure of one of their nuclear testing sites in the north area of the country as well. So North Korea we are really making a lot of really good progress in the North Korean section. I mean, last year there was all the talk about, are we about to start World War III with North Korea? The answer is no. It looks like peace is going to come to this region for the first time in decades. Maybe even a half a century even.
Ever since the very first episode of Trump Republic Radio, we've been talking about, the issue of North Korea, and we've seen so many missile testings, and I didn't think a day like this could even really come. But it's very welcomed, and it will do well for the Trump administration to resolve the tensions in Korea. It's going to make them look good, and it's going to ease a lot of, worries in the world.
Yeah, if Trump can even leave one thing on his legacy as a president, dealing with North Korea and, stopping that situation and bringing peace to that region, that's a really, really good thing. And this is one of the few things where I've seen, there was a lot of pushback on the left, and trying to hype up the whole, North Korea's a bad guy, Trump's going to start us into a war. All that talk has really faded recently. In fact, when it comes to just the whole North Korea situation in general, the left has actually seemed to be pretty, pro-Trump on this side. They're actually applauding him. A lot of Democrats are applauding him for the work that he's done. So that's one area where
at least Democrats
really
in Congress.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah. So yeah, good stuff on the Korea front, and upcoming soon, Trump is going to be meeting with the president of North Korea, so we'll have to see how that meeting goes. Moving on though to India. India approves the death penalty for rape of children under the age of 12. India's Union Cabinet has approved the death penalty for convicted rapists of minors below the age of 12, following mounting pressure on the government. Prime Minister Modi passed an executive order to amend the criminal code during a meeting with the Union Cabinet on Saturday, promising that, quote, no offender will be spared. Those convicted of molesting children under 12 will face the death penalty, and offenders who rape children under the age of 16 will also face stricter punishment. The minimum sentence will be doubled from 10 years to 20 years. The amendment also seeks to introduce longer prison sentences for raping women, increasing the minimum from 7 years to 10 years up to life in prison. The move follows nationwide protest after an 8-year-old girl was kidnapped and gang raped for several days before being killed. 8 men, including 4 policemen, were arrested in that case.
I'm okay with this. I think anyone who rapes a child should definitely be executed, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well. And it's good to see that India is getting serious on it. Moving on from there, though, let's talk about some things in Europe. So the first thing we want to talk about is that Hungary has seen a nearly 100% drop in illegal immigration. The Hungarian Prime Minister's Chief Secretary Advisory, Gregory Bakondi, told reporters that numbers of successful attempts to illegally cross the border fell from 391,000 in 2015 to 18,236 in 2016 to only 1,184 in 2017. This represents a massive decline of 99.7% since 2015. Hungary now has 1/4 of the length of its border protected by a 4-meter-high razor wire fence. Most of the fence lies on the Hungarian-Serbian border, where migrants from the Middle East have used the route to travel into Eastern and Central Europe. The EU has put immense pressure on Hungary to tear it down, but Hungary insists that its security measures, quote, are not only protecting Hungarians, but Austrians, Germans, and other European Union citizens as well.
So for anyone who ever tells you that walls don't work, there you go.
This isn't even a wall, and they're
it's just a fence with a bunch of wire on top of it.
They are just taking the security of their borders seriously, and when you do that, you can see dramatic drops fall off, and Hungary has seen that. Moving on to some statements by Emmanuel Macron I wanted to talk about this week. French President Emmanuel Macron last Sunday night talked about the future of Europe and Africa. Macron said, quote, the migratory phenomenon we are facing will be historic, saying that great poverty, climate change, and geopolitical conflict will bring Africans flooding to Europe for many years to come. Macron added that bombshell population growth in Africa was leading to this migration, citing findings in a book by French-American journalist Stephen Smith. Smith estimates currently there are 9 million Africans in Europe, and in the next 30 years that will grow to between 150 and 200 million Africans. Quote, Africans are mostly turning to Europe because the continent of Europe is not an island, because our location, and because Europe has its destiny bound with Africa, Emmanuel Macron said.
Europe will not survive. Europe's barely holding on with 9 million Africans. You increase that number by 15 to 20 times its current size.
All poor people. All people with, very little educational skills or any job skills whatsoever. Yeah. Oftentimes not even speaking the language, but 150 to 200 million in the course of only 30 years.
Europe is committing suicide by letting these people in. I mean,
all people not loyal to European nations.
Yeah. You think these people are going to pay taxes and pay into the system? Hell no. What's it, like 3% or less of refugees in Germany even have jobs?
Yeah, we've talked on this program many times the employment rates of refugees, and it's always abysmal.
It's it's in the single digits. I know that.
We've seen numbers of 3%, 5%, but yeah, always below 10% employment, which is phenomenally bad. They're all people that just get on public welfare. These are international welfare shoppers.
Yeah. And you know how bad the problems of rape is going on in Europe right now. Problems of poverty and crime due to the
mass migration.
You now, like I said, you increase that by 15 to 20 times its current size? What are you doing at that point? Honestly.
And
you're allowing your countries to die.
These numbers are insane. So the United States in legal immigration usually takes around 2 million a year, which is, the highest rate, I believe, in the entire world. But 150 to 200 million over 30 years, that's yearly much greater than the 2 million that we take in the United States. And this is something that we're used to. But this is not something that Europe is used to.
And where are these people going to go? Because they're not going to be able to afford houses. They're going to either set up refugee centers, tent cities, or they're just going to be...
They're going to go everywhere.
Find housing for them.
They're just going to put them everywhere.
Yeah, you think you're living in your nice little French countryside home. Oh, by the way, 200,000 migrants just moved into the city next door. Yeah, that's totally going to work well for you.
And we're just talking about African migrants.
That's not only
Middle Eastern migrants as well, which is a big problem, which, they're coming in the millions as well.
And
the European Union wants this.
You know what's even worse? The European people have no say in this at all.
No.
We had a poll... we just talked about a couple weeks ago where over half of every single country, except for 2 countries in Europe, don't want to bring any more African migrants into their countries. And yet here is Macron, the president of France, saying that, by the way, you think, that 9 million we have right now, we're going to increase that even more so. Why? Because our destiny is bound with Africa.
Yeah.
Hell no.
It's
insane. Should not allow that to happen. And at some point... these people are going to fight back. I hate to say it, but there's going to be a very large war that breaks out in Europe over this sort of stuff. And it's going to be bloody, and there's going to be thousands and thousands of people that are going to die because of this. And it could have been prevented. It easily could have been prevented, but it's not.
Yeah. So the last thing that we want to talk about for Europe this week is kind of a bizarre thing, but it's happening. And that is the United Kingdom is looking to ban plastic straws. British Prime Minister Theresa May said this week that Britain plans to ban the sale of plastic straws and other single-use products such as drink stirrers and cotton buds. The country is also pressing other Commonwealth allies to join them in the ban. Theresa May has pledged to eradicate all plastic waste in the country by the year 2042.
I don't know if you're going to be able to completely get rid of plastic waste by the year 2042, but yeah, this really is kind of a bizarre story. The question I have is, what is the alternative if you get rid of plastic straws? Does everyone just have to drink out of the side of the cup? Are you going to have to make sippy cups that have straws that are built in?
Or are the straws going to be paper? I don't know, but...
I don't know.
You just look at your average everyday life here in the United States. You go out someplace to eat and you get something to drink and you just put a straw on, your cup and you put it in your car and you go.
And they throw it out when you get home.
You don't even think about it, but that's not even going to be a possibility in the United Kingdom in the future.
Are you even going to have... if you get rid of straws, and all of a sudden every company that makes lids for cups is going to have to redesign those?
Just for this specific country.
Yeah.
It's very strange, but it's something that I wanted to mention this week. Moving on now, we have a story out of the Middle East we wanted to touch on.
So this is a story that is actually very, very good news. That's kind of one of those things that's happening in the background that no one's really talking about, but is very, very important. Trump is looking to assemble an Arab army to replace the U.S. troops in Syria. The Saudi Foreign Minister Adel El-Jubeir said that Saudi Arabia would consider sending troops to Syria if they were part of a coalition. The Trump administration is hoping to secure a commitment from a handful of Middle Eastern countries to assemble what is effectively an Arab army for a permanent military stabilizing force in Syria that would replace the U.S. military deployment that's currently in Syria and prevent ISIS from regaining lost territory in Syria's battle-ravaged east. Estimates vary, but it is believed that between 5,000 and 12,000 ISIS fighters are still operating in eastern Syria. They have lost a lot of land, but those people are still there. That's why the fight continues. The U.S. has already been in contact with Egypt in discussions to bring in their troops as replacements as well. Last things first here. Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater USA and brother of Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, said that he has been contacted by the Arabs about building a security force in Syria, but added that the countries he's talked to were waiting to see what Trump would do first. I think this is great. I mean, Trump, if he's talked about, even in the speech when he told us, everybody, that he was going to be launching the new Syria strikes, he even pressured how important it was to get the other countries in the area to deal with this problem and not the United States. And so the whole, is the U.S. withdrawing troops, yes or no, blah, blah, blah. I think it's a great idea to get Saudi Arabia, get Egypt, get any other countries that are involved over there, let them deal with the problem and not us. If that means, getting their guys to switch us out, I'm all for it.
I obviously don't want to be involved. I don't want American troops there. I just don't think that it's going to bring more regional stability by having Saudi troops in Syria when there's already Iranian troops in Syria.
Yeah, it's only going to lead to more war between those countries, which is, a very strong possibility. But at the same time, would you rather have that or more American troops getting killed? Unfortunately, I feel like we're going to have to get involved either way.
It seems like a false dichotomy to me.
Exactly. Exactly.
But, yeah, this is something that they're working on. And, I mean, if you're not a fan of Bashar al-Assad, I guess this is good.
Even if you are a fan of Bashar al-Assad, you can say it's probably good. Because, I don't know. Who knows if it's even going to happen. But, if anything, remember, the U.S. only has about 2,000 troops in Syria right now. Which, that's a lot of troops, but at the same time, it's also not that many. So, if you can get at least 2,000 troops from different Arab countries to actually come together and do it, I guess I would be okay with that. I can see the downside, but it's one of those things.
Yeah. So, for the last story that we have this week, we're going to go to Africa, and we have a name change for a country.
All right.
So, Africa's last monarch, King Mswati III, decided to change the name of his country of Swaziland to Eswatini so that people would not confuse their nation with the nation of Switzerland.
I can see that.
The name means land of the Swazis and was announced the change during their 50th Jubilee celebration of independence from Great Britain. Eswatini is the name of the country before any colonization happened.
All right.
But it's, I don't know, it's a very strange name.
Especially because the E
is not capitalized,
but the S is.
Yeah.
It's, spelled Eswatini.
But I imagine, I watch the news very closely, and, I just caught this. I imagine no one else in the world even knows this is happening. Because, Swaziland only has, under 2 million people.
Yeah, and if you don't know where Swaziland is, if you look at the map of Africa, go to South Africa, and you will see that between South Africa and what's the other country?
Mozambique.
In Mozambique, it's a landlocked country between them. It's not the country that's landlocked within South Africa. It's the other small one that's northeast of it.
Yeah.
That's the one that we're talking about.
So, there's it's the same country, but there's a new country, I guess, technically in the world.
I will say one.
Eswatini.
I was going to say, I will say one thing though. Yesterday, when I first saw this story, when you posted it on here, I googled Eswatini, and everything came up as Swaziland. But if you go into the Wikipedia page of Swaziland, it does say the Kingdom of Eswatini on there. But if you go into Google Maps and you type in Eswatini, it didn't come up as Swaziland. In fact, if you go to Swaziland, it still says Swaziland. So Google, you need to get up on this.
It is very humorous, though, that they're changing the name of their country because it's so similar to another country.
Yeah. Why can't Arkansas and Kansas do this? Why is one Kansas and the other's not Arkansas? Doesn't make any sense, and so they should change it to A-Canny. A-Canny.
I don't know. But, that's the show for this week. We got through quite a lot of stuff. There was a lot of news, like I said, this week.
A lot of news. Hopefully next week I just hope that next week's news is calmed down, because a lot of stuff is going on right now. A lot of different, levels.
We're starting to, really head into the deeper territory of this upcoming midterm election, and, the Mueller probe. That's up in the air at the moment. There's lawsuits everywhere. The FBI is getting involved with things.
People are getting desperate. The deep state is getting desperate. They are trying to intimidate Trump. Hence the title of this episode, Deep State Intimidates.
Yeah. So, once again, thank you for listening to Trump Public Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
That was a good episode.